I'm going to tell you exactly what I do for my final workout leading into a HYROX, what you should do in terms of structuring the workout itself, what the workout means, what some goals of the workout should be, and I'm going to show you how to take that workout and kind of project things out to give you a good idea of what you can expect during race day. Plus, I'll take you through my splits and give you a projection for what I think I could run in HYROX Chicago. So this will be the last final quality session that gives a good amount of volume here. In the last week, I do like to have a little bit of a tune-up, but this workout is more of a bigger voluminous workout, but still kind of cut at where it's been the previous couple of weeks. I think about 50% to 75% of the total amount of intensity volume in your previous workouts at your peak is a good place to aim for this final workout. So for me, what I did this time around, I capped it at about 50%. I didn't want to go too deep into the well. I had a big couple of blocks leading into this, so I wanted to leave a little bit in the tank here. You can have some flexibility here with where you kind of lay it, like if it's a Friday, Sunday, if you need some more recovery before or after. This isn't that critical because the next week is going to be mostly about recovery. So as long as you're giving yourself 5 to 6 days before your race, you should be in a good spot. So I kept this workout crazy simple, and here's what it was. I did half of a HYROX. I did a 1,000-meter run, ski, run, sled, run, burpees. That's it. I just kept it straightforward, the same amount of weight, the same duration in all of the first 4 stations and run. So the reason I love this workout for the week before a HYROX event is that it's going to really help you understand what strategy can work and how to lay out the front half of this race, which is critical. The back half is taking care of your fitness. The first half is more about how you approach things, how you manage your energy, and what expectations you can have going into the race so that you know exactly how hard you can hit each station and each run and where that line is. Because by the time you get to burpee broad jumps, you usually know if it's going to be a good day or if you have overcooked it. So I like to take it there just to see how things are feeling throughout that first portion so I can have an idea of what I can do on race day. So what I wanted to do in this workout was be aggressive on that first run, moderate to thresholdy on the ski, but holding back a bit, pulling the pace back just slightly on that second run, hitting the sled push hard, pulling back slightly again on that next one to focus on recovery, hitting the sled pull hard, then running a bit faster into burpee broad jumps, and then doing burpee broad jumps at what I would project actual race pace to be. You can see the run total didn't play out exactly how I was planning it, but the total time was about the same, give or take 3 or 4 seconds. And the pace that I was reading on the treadmill was about the same. This was done on an assault treadmill, so take that with whatever that means, but it was a straight 1,000 each time down. The stations were a bit more undulated than I was hoping for. The sled push in particular took much longer, but then burpee broad jumps, I made up all that time on the back half. So there's some good and some bad here in terms of like the actual execution. The total time played out almost exactly for what I was planning, which is great. And if you look at this on paper, it seems like the execution was on point. But in terms of how I felt during it, I feel like I was a bit over my skis here, and I needed to really change my approach on the first run and on that ski and sled push because I was feeling pretty much at my line when coming out of burpee broad jumps. So maybe even that's the case too. So there needs to be a bit of an adjustment here in terms of my output on the early portions of the actual event. And hopefully that can come back in terms of the sled push. I can take a bit more time off of there and having a bit more in the tank for that later half. So now I have this data. This is exactly how it went. I have objective data with the times and I have some subjective data for how it actually felt. So now I can take these elements and kind of put them in place and move some pieces around to give myself a decent projection. And now the outcome of these races is generally secondary. It should be about the execution. I can go through line by line with each part of this race and now have a plan to execute on the ski, on the run after the ski, on the sled push. And I can have a target goal, and then I can have a plan within that plan so I can hit that target goal. So now let's talk about some projections. What does this mean? What do I think I could run? I did some projections off of my RoxOpt earlier this week, and now I can kind of take that based off of some objective data and take it with the subjective data that I just had in this previous workout and kind of meet in the middle here. So in the first half of that workout, I was 5:43 for my total pace. That was my average for each of those first 4,000s while I was on the assault treadmill. I figure I probably was going to drift backwards a little bit. So I'm gonna give myself a 6-minute pace for that last 4K. That puts my run total at 29:07, which is a 5:51 pace. This is right in line with where I have been in previous blocks and previous races. So this lines up for me. I think that is absolutely doable. The thing with HYROX is that it's not just 8K. They say it's 8.7. So you need to add in that 0.7, and it's not always going to be every run is 1,000 meters, and then the 0.7 is built in somewhere in the rock zone. Sometimes it might be 1.1 in the rock zone, and the runs are going to be shorter, or vice versa. It might be 0.5 in the rock zone, and then it's 8.2 on each of the runs. So you can't really take the straight splits of 1,000 meters and then just project it out. It's not going to work that way. So then I took the 0.7 and projected that to be at about 7-minute pace. Now, that is considerably slower than what I had been doing on the actual runs, but to take into consideration the actual rock zone itself, the different turns and moving around, maybe there's some deceleration or the acceleration takes longer than I'm hoping for in and out of stations. So 7 minutes is like pretty conservative, and I feel comfortable that that is a pace that I could hit without really any problem in and out of the rock zone. So taking that 0.7 and adding at 7-minute pace is another 3:03. So for this instance, my 8K was 29:07, and then adding 3:03 for the rock zone. That puts me at 32:10 for my total 8.7 kilometer effort during a projected HYROX. Now I have to take a look at the stations. My first half of the stations were 12:20 with everything up until burpee broad jumps. So then what I did, I took a look at RoxOpt and my last 10 races or so and gave me a general idea of what I had been capable of in the past, and then taking my current training and adjusting it as needed. So on these back targets, I had a 3:57 for the row, which is about 1:49 pace, conservative. 1:40 on the farmers is right about my average there. That's conservative as well. 3:30, I hope to be faster than that on the lunges, but that's generally where I end up. And 3:50 on the wall balls. I think I'm capable of doing more on the wall balls, but for this sake of this, I'm just going to keep it there, and that ends up being 12:57. So then once this is done, you could just add this to the run total, but there are more things to consider when you're doing it in your gym versus when you're doing it at a HYROX event. There are transitions within the transitions. The rock zone itself is, of course, the transition area that they do account for the time. But you will pass a mat, and then once you pass that mat is when you enter the station. And then your station time starts when you pass that mat. So as you pass the mat, you need to consider what it takes from the time from the entrance to when you get on the actual station. And the same way for coming out. Now, this is going to be different for each station, so you can't really say, oh, it's going to be 5 seconds on each station, for instance. What you need to do is go through each station and see where there will be longer transition zones. You can expect it to be a longer transition zone on the ski, on the sled push, on the sled pull. Burpee broad jumps, not as much. You cross the mat and start doing burpees right away. On the row is a bit more of a transition. And lunges, not much transition. Wall balls is an incredibly long transition, and who knows how they actually put the mat out. Those times don't always make sense. So what I did then, I added 16 seconds for the transition in and out for 5 different stations that we went over. So that's another 80 seconds to my total time. So I took my first half, added to my second half projection, then added this minute 20. That gives me a 26:37 for my total zones. So that's a 32:10 for the 8.7 and a 26:37, which equals out to be a 58:47 during that workout yesterday. I also am at 5,600 feet here in Arvada, Colorado, which is going to add some time. There is an altitude conversion that you can do that I will do for the sake of this and my projection here. So what I did, I punched it into an altitude conversion, and it gave me about a minute and 14 seconds on just the run. There might be some time that will be saved on the stations themselves, but I'm not going to concern myself too much with that. Too hard to project, and then I'm just making things up. I'm making things up anyway, but that's even making it up more. So if I just take the conversion from my 8K at altitude, drop it into sea level, that gives me about, 1 minute 20. So then it's a 57:33. So after this, it just kind of affirms that I feel I am in good shape to PR here. I hope that everything goes well. And there's a lot of variables that will be in play that were different than my actual event. The sleds might move better. The sleds might move worse. You never really know until you are there on the actual day. All right, so after all that, I'm just going to throw it all out the door. I'm going to run 55. I'm just going to send it, bruh.